The damp chill of the concrete seeped through my thin soles. Parking garage level B4, one car, not mine. It was a ridiculous place to meet a lawyer, but the man had insisted, his voice a gravelly murmur over the crackling phone line. I stood by the dented sedan, its paint the color of old bruises, my breath pluming in the stale air. This was it then. The end of my cramped apartment and ramen dinners. Or so I hoped. My fingers traced the worn leather of my messenger bag. Inside, a single, official-looking envelope. It felt heavier than it should, not with paper, but with the weight of expectation. Raj, the will read, the sole beneficiary. A name I barely recognized, a relative I'd never met, had left me everything. An estate, a mansion, enough to finally breathe. The lawyer, Mr. Silas, had been vague, his words laced with an almost theatrical caution. A substantial property, he'd said. Quite remote. Remote was an understatement. The address he'd given me was a pinprick on a map, miles from the nearest town, surrounded by land so vast it was marked simply as unclaimed. I shivered, though the temperature wasn't that low. It was the stillness, the profound absence of sound that pricked at my nerves. No distant traffic, no hum of unseen machinery, just the slow drip of water somewhere, a percussive echo in the cavernous space. My own heartbeat felt too loud, a frantic drum against the silence. I was determined, yes, but beneath the resolve, a tremor of unease had begun to set in. This felt less like a windfall and more like a trap being sprung. Mister, he moved with a deliberate slowness, his footsteps unnervingly soft on the concrete. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes, magnified behind thick spectacles, seemed to bore into me. He offered no handshake, just a curt nod. Mr. Raj, he rasped, voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. I have the document. I fumbled for the envelope, my hand suddenly clumsy. Yes, here. He took it with two surprisingly strong fingers, his skin papery and translucent. He didn't open it. Instead, he produced a single, tarnished key from his pocket. It was ornate with a heavy, almost medieval design. The estate, he said, his gaze sweeping over me, is yours. The will is quite clear. I am to reside there. Permanently, permanently. The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I'd imagined a fresh start, not a sentence. Permanently, I repeated, the question catching in my throat. The terms are specific, Mr. Silas confirmed, a faint, unreadable smile playing on his lips. The wealth is contingent on my continued occupancy. There are conditions. He handed me the key. The groundskeeper will meet I there. He maintains the property. He paused, his eyes seeming to cloud over for a moment. Do not stray from the main house, especially at night. The woods. The single car, not mine, sat like a silent witness. I looked at the key in my palm. It felt wrong, imbued with a history that was suddenly, terrifyingly mine. What conditions? What did he mean about the woods? And why did the key feel like it was burning a hole in my hand? The key felt cold against my skin, a stark contrast to the sweat beading on my palm. I turned it over and over, tracing the intricate, almost organic, patterns etched into its tarnished surface. This wasn't just a key to a house. It felt like a key to something else. The parking garage level B4, one car, not mine, loomed around me, a concrete tomb smelling faintly of exhaust fumes and damp concrete. The silence here was different from the silence of the mansion, more sterile, less watchful. I shoved the key into my pocket, the metal a hard, insistent presence against my thigh. My own car, a sensible sedan, looked impossibly normal, parked a few spaces down. It was my only tether to the world I was rapidly leaving behind. The drive back to the mansion was a blur, but there was nothing, just the ribbon of asphalt unwinding into the fading light. The mansion, when it finally rose against the bruised sky, looked even more formidable than I remembered. Its jagged silhouette clawed at the clouds, a monument to forgotten opulence and creeping decay. The air around it felt heavier, thicker, as if the very atmosphere was reluctant to trespass. Inside, the silence was a living thing, a palpable weight pressing in on me. I'd spent the previous day exploring the main rooms, the grand hall with its cobweb-draped chandelier, the library filled with the scent of decaying paper, the ballroom where the ghosts of forgotten waltzes seemed to linger. Now, as twilight deepened, the house began to breathe. It started subtly. A floorboard creaked upstairs, a sound I'd dismissed as the settling of an old structure. Then a faint scraping like fingernails on wood from somewhere deep within the walls. I told myself it was rodents, the natural inhabitants of any neglected dwelling. My rational mind, determined to hold onto its moorings, clung to these explanations like a drowning man to driftwood. I made my way to the kitchen, a cavernous space dominated by an ancient cast-iron stove. I opened the pantry door, expecting to find shelves of dusty jars or perhaps forgotten canned goods. Instead, it was bare, save for a single chipped ceramic bowl sitting precisely in the center of the floor. It was empty, yet it seemed to pulse with a faint, almost imperceptible energy. I stared at it, a prickle of unease crawling up my spine. Had I missed this yesterday? I was certain I had. My gaze swept over the rest of the pantry. Nothing, just the rough-hewn wood of the shelves, the stained concrete floor. Later in the drawing room, I tried to lose myself in a book, one of the few that hadn't disintegrated into dust. It sounded like my name, Raj. I froze, my heart giving a sudden, jarring lurch. I held my breath, straining to hear it again, only the hiss of the gas lamp and the distant groan of the house. My hands trembled, and I had to grip the book tighter to keep it steady. It was the wind, I told myself, a draft snaking through some unseen crack in the ancient stonework. But the windows were all shut, sealed tight against the encroaching night. I decided to explore the second floor, hoping the light of my flashlight would dispel the growing unease. The hallway stretched out before me, a long, dark corridor lined with closed doors. I stopped outside one particular door, the one at the very end of the hall. A faint, sweet smell, like overripe flowers, wafted from the opening. It was sickly and cloying, a scent that didn't belong in this dusty, forgotten place. Hesitantly, I pushed the door open. The room was a bedroom once grand, now draped in a thick shroud of dust. A four-poster bed dominated the center, its velvet hangings tattered and faded. The air inside was heavy, stagnant, and the cloying floral scent was stronger here. A flashlight beam swept across the room, landing on the vanity table. Beside it, a small, ornate music box. As my light fell upon it, the music box sprang open, its lid creaking. A tinkling, discordant melody began to play, a childish, off-key tune that sent a shiver down my spine. It was a lullaby, but twisted wrong. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the music box. It played on, its broken notes a mocking echo of innocence lost. I turned and fled, the music chasing me down the hall. Downstairs, I found myself standing by the grand fireplace, the flames I'd stoked earlier now reduced to embers. Had the music box been playing on its own? The air in the parking garage level B4, one car not mine, was thick with the cloying smell of stale exhaust and something else. Something metallic, like old pennies. My own car, a sensible sedan that suddenly felt absurdly out of place, was a good 50 yards away. Its familiar lines a small comfort in this oppressive gloom. But the key, the one from the solicitor's office, the one Raj had said was for safekeeping, it was clutched in my hand, its cold biting into my skin even through the dampness of my palm. I'd come here, to this forgotten level of the city's municipal parking structure, on impulse. The solicitor had been cagey, muttering about specific instructions and discretion. He'd handed me a plain manila envelope, and inside, nestled on faded velvet, was this key. No address, no explanation, just a cryptic note. Level B4, the one that doesn't belong. Now, standing here, the hum of the distant ventilation system, a low thrum against my eardrums, I felt a prickle of unease crawl up my spine. The solicitor's words echoed in my mind, a nervous tick of his speech pattern. The one that doesn't belong, Mr. Raj. What did that even mean? Most of the cars were unremarkable, dusty sedans and SUVs. Then I saw it. It was tucked away in a corner, almost as if it had tried to shrink into the concrete itself. A sleek, black limousine. It looked impossibly out of place, a predator in a flock of sheep. Its chrome gleamed dully, reflecting the flickering fluorescent lights like 1,000 tiny, watchful eyes. It had no license plates, no visible manufacturer's emblem. It was wrong, my breath hitched. This had to be it. I walked towards it, each step echoing unnervingly loud. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and traced the outline of the driver's side door handle. It was cool, smooth, utterly devoid of any texture. It felt wrong, like touching polished obsidian that had been kept in a freezer. I tried the handle. It didn't budge. Of course it didn't. This was too easy, too direct. The solicitor hadn't said anything about driving anything. He just said the key was for safekeeping. Safekeeping from what or for whom? A sudden, sharp clang from somewhere deeper in the garage made me jump. My head whipped around, my heart leaping into my throat. Nothing. My own breathing seemed to roar in my ears. Raj, I told myself, I read being ridiculous. It's just an old garage. I looked back at the limousine. Its tinted windows were like opaque shields, revealing nothing of the interior. I ran my hand over the smooth, cool metal of the hood. It was seamless, as if it had been molded from a single piece of material. No rivets, no bolts, nothing to suggest it was assembled. It felt unnervingly organic, like the shell of some colossal, unknown insect. I finally brought the key to the driver's side door. There was no lock visible, no keyhole. I hesitated, my fingers hovering. Then I noticed it. A small, almost imperceptible indentation near the base of the door frame. Precisely where a key might fit, but so subtle I'd almost missed it. It was shaped like a stylized teardrop. With a deep, shaky breath, I pressed the key into the indentation. It slid in with a soft, almost silken click. The metal of the door felt different now, yielding slightly beneath my touch. A low hum began to emanate from within the vehicle, a sound that vibrated not just in the air, but in my bones. The tint of the windows seemed to deepen, becoming an impenetrable black. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to flee, to sprint back to my sensible sedan and pretend I'd never seen this monstrous thing. But a morbid curiosity, a desperate need to understand, kept me rooted. What was in there? What was this key unlocking? I leaned closer, trying to peer through the inky blackness. The hum intensified, a deep resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate with a silent, malevolent promise. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw something move behind the reflection, a flicker of movement in the periphery, too quick to be real. The solicitor's words. Raj. They snagged in my mind like burrs on wool. I'd left the solicitor's office hours ago, the stale scent of old paper and his nervous cologne clinging to me. Now the fluorescent lights of parking garage level B4, one car, not mine, cast a sickly yellow glow, reflecting off the slick, oil-stained concrete. The air was thick with the metallic tang of exhaust fumes and something else, something damp and earthy like a freshly dug grave. My car, a sensible sedan I'd bought with hard-earned savings, sat a dozen spots away. But it was the other car that held my gaze. A dark, hulking thing, a vintage model with fins that jutted out like predatory teeth. It wasn't just out of place, it felt wrong. The chrome was dull, pitted, as if it had wept rust. The windows were opaque with grime, obscuring whatever lay within. It was the one that didn't belong. A shiver traced its way down my spine, independent of the garage chill. I told myself it was just a car, an old relic left to decay. But the solicitor's peculiar phrasing, the way his eyes had darted around his cramped office, had lodged itself deep. He'd been afraid. I'd seen it, a flicker of pure, unadulterated fear that had nothing to do with legal jargon. But the house, even miles away, felt like a weight on my chest. It was more than just an old building settling. It was, aware, a distant clatter echoed through the cavernous space, making me jump. My breath hitched, but my ears strained, straining for any other sound, any indication that I wasn't alone. I walked towards the strange car, my footsteps unnaturally loud on the concrete. Each click of my heels seemed to announce my presence, an invitation to what? The car's doors were locked, of course. Nothing, just the faint outline of a steering wheel, a dashboard shrouded in dust. Yet I felt watched. A prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the undeniable feeling of eyes on me. The will. The promise of wealth was the bait, I knew that now. But what was the hook? What was this house, this sprawling, decaying monument to forgotten lives, truly after? My writer's mind, always eager for a story, was starting to spin. The paint was peeling, revealing patches of dull metal beneath. It felt ancient, imbued with the residue of countless journeys, countless occupants. Had one of them left it here, forgotten like a discarded toy? Or was it, waiting? A draft snaked through the garage, carrying with it the faint, cloying scent of decay. It was stronger now, mingling with the exhaust fumes. It reminded me of the damp, earth smell from the mansion's cellar, the one that had made my stomach churn. I pulled my jacket tighter, my fingers brushing against the worn fabric. I needed to get back, to confront the house, to find answers. This car, this place, it was a distraction, or was it a clue? I turned away from the hulking vehicle, the image of its opaque windows burned into my mind. As I walked, I kept glancing back, a knot of apprehension tightening in my gut. Then I heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping. It wasn't the wind, slow, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. My blood, already thrumming with unease, began to feel thick and sluggish. I froze, my eyes fixed on the vehicle. The tapping continued, a maddening, insistent beat. There was someone, or something, trying to get out, or was it trying to tell me something? The fluorescent hum of parking garage level B4, one car, not mine, was a thin, reedy sound against the thrumming in my ears. I gripped the steering wheel, gripped tight. The car. It was a sleek, black thing, too new for this forgotten corner of the city, its tinted windows like vacant eyes. It wasn't mine. I'd driven my old sedan here, the one with the sputtering exhaust and the faded blue paint. This car, it was a phantom. The solicitor's words echoed. The one that doesn't belong. He'd said it with a nervous twitch, his gaze darting to the ornate grandfather clock in his dusty office. The one that doesn't belong. I dismissed it as a cryptic clue about the inheritance, some obscure clause in the will. But here, in this echoing concrete cavern, it felt different. It felt like a warning. I leaned forward, my breath fogging the windshield. The car sat there silent, inert. No lights, no engine noise, just presence. A cold dread unlike anything I'd felt before began to seep into my bones. It wasn't the familiar unease of an empty house at night or the prickle of being watched. This was a heavier, more ancient fear, like the weight of stones pressing down. I checked my phone. No signal, of course. The mansion had a dead zone. A perfect suffocating silence that swallowed all attempts to connect. This garage, too. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust fumes, damp concrete, and something else. Something faintly metallic like old pennies. My gaze swept the deserted level. Every distant drip of water sounded like a footstep. I told myself it was just a coincidence. Someone else's car, a wrong turn. But the solicitor's face swam before my eyes, his wide, fearful eyes. He knew. He'd seen something. The black car, it was too perfect, too out of place. It felt placed like a deliberate punctuation mark. I tried to recall the solicitor's exact phrasing. The one that doesn't belong, Mr. Raj. He'd emphasized my name, as if I was the one who didn't belong. I fumbled with the gear shift, my fingers clumsy. My own car. Where was my car? I scanned the rows of parked vehicles. My faded blue sedan was nowhere in sight. Panic, sharp and hot, began to bloom in my chest. This was not a coincidence. My heart began to hammer, a frantic drum against my ribs. I forced myself to breathe, to think. I had parked my car in the usual spot near the elevator. I had walked from the elevator past the row where that car now sat. I pushed open my car door, the familiar squeak a small comfort, but the relief was short-lived. The interior smelled faintly of dust and old leather. Nothing seemed amiss. But the absence of my car outside, it was a gaping hole in reality. I got out, my legs feeling strangely heavy. The concrete beneath my feet was gritty. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. It was like standing at the edge of a precipice. I reached the black car. I peered through the tinted window. Inside, the seats were empty. It was as if the car itself was holding its breath. I ran my hand over the cool, smooth metal of the door. It felt impossibly solid, yet strangely unreal. Then I saw it, not dirt, not oil, it was sticky, and it was a deep, unnatural crimson. My breath hitched. I snatched my hand back as if I'd touched a hot stove. It was blood, I was sure of it, fresh. My gaze snapped back to the solicitor's office, to the grandfather clock, the solicitor's nervous twitch. The one that doesn't belong. It wasn't about the inheritance. It wasn't a clue. It was a description. I backed away. My eyes locked on the smudge. The metallic scent was stronger now, cloying. It was the smell of something that had been disturbed, something that was hungry. The car wasn't just a car, it was a lure, a trap, and my car was gone, taken, replaced. The implication hit me with the force of a physical blow. The house, it wasn't just the house. It was something within the house, something that had reached out. It had manipulated the solicitor somehow. It had made him give me the clue. And now it had taken my car. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. The cryptic will, the isolation, the strange occurrences at the mansion, the gnawing sense of being watched. It wasn't just a feeling, it was real. The house was alive, it was aware, and it was playing a game with me. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The black car remained motionless, an obsidian sentinel in the dim light. What did it want? And where was my car now? The metallic tang in the air of parking garage level B4, one car, not mine, was thick enough to taste. It coated my tongue, a coppery insult. My gaze was still fixed on that impossibly dark smear on the concrete floor, a stain that seemed to absorb the weak fluorescent hum overhead. It wasn't just a stain. It was a shape, a ragged outline. My breath hitched. I could feel the hairs on my arms prickle, not from the chill that always seemed to seep from the concrete here, but from a deeper, more visceral dread. I forced myself to look away, my eyes scanning the cavernous space. The single car, a nondescript sedan, sat like a forgotten sentinel, its windows opaque with grime, nothing else. Just the endless expanse of gray, the skeletal network of pipes crisscrossing the ceiling, and the low drone of unseen machinery. This was where the note had led me. This was where I'd expected. What a confrontation, an answer. My mind replayed the words, the frantic scroll on the torn page. It wasn't about the inheritance, it was a description. A description of what? The stain, the garage, or something else entirely, something I hadn't even begun to comprehend. The house had been playing games with me, twisting my assumptions, feeding me half-truths that led me down dead ends. This felt like another one. I turned back to the stain. It was deeper now somehow. Or maybe my eyes were just playing tricks. When it steadied, the smear seemed larger. My heart, which I'd been trying to keep steady, began to thrum against my ribs. This wasn't just a damp patch. It was a wound in the floor. I needed to get out of here. The note had been a trap, a lure. The house had known I'd come. It always knew. I spun around, my footsteps echoing unnervingly loud in the vastness. The concrete ramp leading back to the elevator bank seemed miles away. As I hurried towards the elevator, a new sound emerged, faint at first, then growing. A rhythmic scraping. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause. It was coming from further down the garage, from the direction of the single, grimy car. My steps faltered. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to not look back, but a morbid curiosity, a desperate need to understand, held me captive. I edged closer, my body tensing with every echoing scrape. The sound was slow, deliberate, like something heavy being dragged, or perhaps something being sharpened. The metallic smell intensified, now laced with something else, something faintly sweet like overripe fruit. My stomach churned. I rounded the end of a parked utility vehicle and my breath caught in my throat. The scraping stopped. The single car sat there, its doors still shut, its windows still opaque, but something had changed. The smell was overpowering here, a nauseating blend of rust and decay. My gaze darted to the smear on the floor again. It was still there, but now it looked less like a stain and more like a discarded outline, an impression, as if something had pressed itself there, leaving its mark. I backed away slowly, my eyes never leaving the car. The house was watching. It had brought me here to this specific spot for a reason. It wanted me to see, to understand. But understanding felt like a trap itself. What was it trying to tell me? What was that smell? My hand fumbled for my phone, the smooth glass a comfort against my clammy palm. No signal, of course. The house always made sure I was alone. I tried the elevator. The call button remained stubbornly unlit. Locked, another dead end. I was trapped in this echoing metallic tomb with a mystery that was rapidly curdling into a tangible threat. The house wasn't just old, it was alive. And it was playing with me. I needed to get back. Back to the relative safety of the mansion, though safety was a word that had lost all meaning. As I turned to face the ramp again, a new sound, distinct from the scraping, reached my ears. Was it the wind, or was it the house, finally revealing a sliver of its true nature, its voice emerging from the very fabric of the decaying structure? And if it was speaking, what would it say next? It wasn't just a puddle. It had depth. A viscous sheen that rippled faintly, as if stirred by an unseen current. A chill, unrelated to the garage ambient coolness, snaked up my spine. This place, this level, felt wrong. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, too loud, too sharp against the dull thrum of the ventilation system. Each click of my heel on the stained concrete felt like a hammer blow. I kept my eyes on the smear, willing it to be something mundane, something explainable. A spill from a faulty engine, perhaps. But the richness of the color, the way it seemed to writhe just at the edge of my vision, it defied logic. It was the color of a wound, deep and festering. I told myself it was stress. I needed sleep. I needed sunlight. I needed to get away from this suffocating atmosphere, but the will, that cursed document, kept replaying in my mind. Immense wealth. The promise was a siren song, pulling me deeper into this nightmare. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A jolt of pure, unreasoning fear. Who would be calling me here? I fumbled with it, my fingers clumsy and slick. The screen flared to life, revealing a single unread message from the estate lawyer. My heart gave a lurch, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. I tapped it open. Regarding the property, an anomaly has been detected in the West Wing's structural integrity. We advise immediate evacuation until a full assessment can be made. Please confirm receipt of this warning. Structural integrity. An anomaly. It sounded official, like a genuine concern, but I knew this wasn't about crumbling plaster or faulty wiring. The West Wing, the place the house wanted me to explore. It hadn't moved, it was just there, a silent, terrible invitation. The lawyer's warning felt like a test. My hands trembled as I typed a reply. Received. I will assess the situation myself. I hit send, the small act of defiance feeling monumental. I wasn't running. Not yet. The elevator doors hissed open, a cavernous moor of polished steel. The descent was smooth, silent, too silent. The house was playing with me, lulling me into a false sense of security before the next onslaught. As the doors slid shut behind me, I heard it. A faint scratching sound coming from the floor. It was intermittent at first, like a mouse skittering behind a wall. Then it grew louder, more insistent, as if something were trying to claw its way through the metal. My breath hitched. I pressed myself against the cool, smooth wall, my muscles tensing. The scratching stopped. The elevator juddered to a halt. Dust motes danced in the slivers of moonlight that pierced the grimy windows, looking like tiny, spectral insects. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something else, something cloying and sweet, like overripe fruit left too long in the sun. I hesitated. It was that way. I could feel its pull, a magnetic force drawing me closer. My feet felt rooted to the spot. Then from the top of the stairs, a sound, a soft rhythmic creak like a swing in motion. But there was no swing, no breeze, just the sound repeating, creak, creak, creak. It was the sound of something old, something heavy, moving with a deliberate, unsettling slowness. Nothing. It was a sound designed to fray nerves, to chip away at sanity. I remembered the smear in the garage, the lawyer's warning, the scratching, and now the creaking. It wanted me to break. My jaw tightened. I wouldn't give it the satisfaction. I walked towards the corridor leading to the West Wing. My boots made a soft, thudding sound on the Persian rug, a sound that seemed swallowed by the vastness of the foyer. Each step was a conscious effort, a battle against the rising tide of apprehension. The portraits on the walls seemed to lean out, their painted faces contorted into silent screams. I could feel their gaze like a physical weight pressing down on me. As I neared the door to the West Wing, the temperature dropped. My breath plumed in the frigid air. The sweet, rotting scent intensified, almost suffocating. It looked ancient, forbidding, and it was slightly ajar. It pulsed subtly like a slow heartbeat. I could hear it now, a faint, dry rustling from within, like dead leaves skittering across stone. My hand, slick with sweat, reached for the cold metal of the doorknob. It felt unnaturally smooth, almost greasy. A tremor ran through my arm, a protest from my body. My mind screamed at me to turn back, to flee. But the promise of wealth, the need to understand, to conquer this thing, held me captive. I pushed the door open. The creaking from the stairs stopped abruptly. The rustling ceased. A profound silence descended, heavier than any sound. The blackness within the room seemed to deepen, to coalesce. It was impossibly soft, a dry, sibilant sound that seemed to originate from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't a voice I recognized, yet it felt intimately familiar, like a memory I had long suppressed. Raj, what did it want from me? The air in the parking garage was thick with the cloying, metallic tang of old oil and something else, something that clung to the back of my throat like dust. My breath hitched. I was on parking garage level B4. One car, not mine. It was a dark sedan, its paint dulled by years of neglect, a fine layer of grit coating its windshield. The silence here was different from the silence in the house. The house's silence was always pregnant, always listening. It felt like a trap, a deliberate redirection. But the alternative, staying in that suffocating, watchful place, had become unbearable. They were projections, I knew, but the raw, gutting pain they evoked was sickeningly real. My hands trembled as I fumbled for the small, tarnished silver locket I'd found in the study. It was the only tangible thing the will hadn't accounted for, a peculiar omission. The inscription on the back was faint, almost erased by time. The heart of the house remembers. I dismissed it as romantic nonsense, but now in this sterile, echoing space, it felt like a clue. A faint scraping sound broke the stillness. It came from deeper within the garage, a dry, dragging noise that made the hairs on my arms prickle. I froze, straining to hear. It wasn't the squeal of tires or the rumble of an engine. It was slower, more deliberate, like something being pulled. It fed on it, I realized. and the locket, the heart of the house remembers. I took a tentative step forward, my shoes echoing on the concrete. I waited, my senses on high alert. Nothing, just the hum of unseen machinery somewhere above, a sterile, impersonal sound. Then, a faint scent wafted towards me. Not oil, not dust. It was the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, the same cloying, sweet decay that permeated Blackwood Manor. It was impossible. This was a concrete tomb. The driver's side door was ajar, a blacker rectangle in the dim light. I hadn't noticed it was open before. They were soft, insidious, weaving a tapestry of my worst memories. The time I failed my exams, the argument with my father before he left, the gnawing loneliness of my early 20s, they were all there, amplified, distorted. You are alone, Raj. No one is coming for you. We are all you have. I clutched the locket, its cool metal a small anchor in the swirling chaos. The heart of the house remembers. What did it remember, and why was it leading me here to this desolate place? I forced myself to move towards the sedan. Each step felt like wading through thick, unseen syrup. My chest tightened, a familiar pressure building. I was so close to the house, to its suffocating embrace, even here. They were no longer just memories, they were promises of oblivion, of peace. As I neared the open car door, I saw it, not inside the car but reflected on its grimy window, a face. It was the face I'd seen in the manor's mirrors, the manifestation of the house's hunger. But it wasn't just a reflection. It was there, pressing against the glass from the inside, its features contorting as if in agony. Then, a new sound emerged from the car, a soft, rhythmic thudding, like a slow, heavy heartbeat. Or was something else trapped within, something the house was trying to consume? What was truly at the heart of Blackwood Manor? The air in the parking garage level B4, one car, not mine, was thick with the smell of stale exhaust and damp concrete. A single fluorescent tube flickered erratically overhead, casting long, dancing shadows that twisted familiar shapes into monstrous silhouettes. My breath hitched. This was not where I expected to be, not after everything. My hands, still slick with a cold sweat that refused to dissipate, gripped the steering wheel of a nondescript sedan. It wasn't mine. I didn't even recognize the make. The locket, the one I'd found nestled in the velvet lining of the music box, lay open on the passenger seat. Inside, the miniature portrait of the woman, the one who looked so much like my mother, stared back with vacant eyes. The house, Blackwood Manor, and the locket. It was the key. I remembered the final confrontation. I'd clutched the locket, its metal burning against my skin, and screamed. A scream born from the realization that the house wasn't just a building. It was a consciousness, a hungry, parasitic entity that had latched onto the lingering sorrow of its former inhabitants, twisting their pain into a weapon. The woman in the locket, I understood now, was not a victim in the way I'd first assumed. He was a vessel, a conduit, and the house had tried to make me one too, but I hadn't succumbed. I'd fought back, not with brute force, but with something far more potent, acceptance. I'd acknowledged the fear, the grief, the loneliness the house had amplified within me, and in doing so, I'd starved it. The malevolent energy, deprived of its fuel, had recoiled, a wounded beast retreating into its lair. The manor had shuddered, the very foundations groaning as if in its death throes, and then, nothing, or so it seemed. I'd found myself here in this sterile, echoing space, the locket still warm in my hand. The wealth promised in the will was a cruel joke, a lure to drag me into the manor's hungry maw. The true inheritance was a lesson in resilience, a brutal baptism by fire. My gaze drifted back to the car. The driver's side door was slightly ajar. A faint, rhythmic thumping emanated from within, like a distant heartbeat. My fingers twitched. Was it another trap? Had the house in its final moments managed to ensnare something else, something to continue its grim work? Or was it a remnant, an echo of the life that had once pulsed within these walls, now trapped in this forgotten corner of the world? I pushed the car door open. The thumping grew louder, more insistent. The interior of the car was surprisingly clean, devoid of the dust and decay that had permeated Blackwood Manor. The air inside was cool, almost sterile, a stark contrast to the musty dampness of the garage. On the passenger seat, beside the open locket, sat a small, intricately carved wooden bird. It was the same wood as the music box. As I reached for the bird, the thumping stopped. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. My eyes snapped to the locket. The woman's painted eyes seemed to hold a flicker of something new, a hint of peace. Or was it a trick of the flickering light? I picked up the wooden bird. It was smooth and cool to the touch, surprisingly light. As I turned it over in my palm, a tiny catch sprang open on its underside. It looked old, worn, its teeth smoothed by time. A key to what? Another secret? Another prison? A faint breeze, carrying the ghost of ozone and damp earth, swept through the parking garage. Only the weak glow of the locket's enamel offered any illumination. I was free of Blackwood Manor, I knew that much. The house, as a sentient entity, was gone. But the echoes, the lingering tendrils of its influence remained. This key, this car, this garage, they felt like the final act of a play I hadn't fully understood. Had the house, in its dying breath, orchestrated this entire scenario, leaving me with a puzzle to solve, a new burden to carry, or had it simply released me, leaving me to find my own way out of the labyrinth it had constructed? My fingers tightened around the silver key. The cold metal bit into my skin, a stark, tangible reminder that the nightmare might be over, but the consequences were just beginning. What door did this key unlock? And more importantly, was I truly ready to face whatever lay beyond it?